Thank you for having me here, and I'm looking forward to this second day after a very productive day yesterday. So as Valeria said, thank you for the kind words. I'm here wearing several hats. As an educator, as a researcher, I'm also PI of an ERC project called Koala that I'll say a few words about later because it's always relevant in some way or another. And I'm also a member of the editorial board of the SSH of the Marketplace. So I'll be talking about that as well. So what I'll cover today, so I'll start with the elephant in the room, generative AI. It has come up, of course, in the discussions yesterday, but I decided to make it the core of my presentation because I believe that generative AI, to this moment, makes what we're doing here even more urgent. I'll draw my own research to illustrate what transparent, reproducible scholarship actually looks like in practice. And I'll talk about what I think students need in this context and what CLARIN can produce and how we can do it even better. And I'll finish with a few ideas that hopefully will spark a bit of a discussion. So let me start with something that I suspect we've all noticed. Our students arrive already using generative AI. They use it to draft, to summarize, to write code. They query LLMs as first step in their research, and often even the last one and the only one. At least this is what I observed very clearly in the past couple of years. And they tend to accept fluent output as evidence, as credible and trustworthy. So if it sounds right, then it must be right, and they stop there. And of course, I'm not trying to criticize them a priori. I mean, these are rational responses to a technology that is genuinely impressive. And I'm not interested in being the police person here against the students. But what concerns me is the gap that I try to summarize on the right. So students who can use generative AI tools confidently, but cannot say what data they were trained on, their biases, and how to evaluate AI, what AI produces. That's really the gap where I think we need to intervene pretty urgently. Because I see a risk here. So we risk training a generation of what I call button pushers rather than scholars who can interrogate evidence as we've been trained to do for some time now. And this, I think, is a real possibility, something that is happening. And I've also seen that when speaking with people working in industry where they say, well, now the new recruits, the coders that we recruit, they just don't code anymore. They rely on AI and then they are stuck when there's a problem. So we see that in the students as a real risk. If they rely on tools that they cannot properly inspect, they lose the habit of asking questions, asking where something came from. So the source criticism, this deep awareness of the methodology, something that risks disappearing. So what we need is a curriculum that builds the critical foundation, lets students engage with AI responsibly. So appraising data provenance, also transparent, replicable workflows, so breaking up the task into steps that we can explain and document and fully engage with, and not just the end result. The ability to be critical, interrogate also the results. These are values that we have as humanists. And the question is whether our teaching is really future-proof and structured to really ensure that they are passed on. So I'm going to talk about my research a little bit. So this is a project that I did a few years ago. It was called the Living with Machines. And in this project I led, it's a work that answered the question, how did certain words change their meaning during the Industrial Revolution? And just as an example of the kind of acriticality or criticality that I was talking about. So on the left, you can see some really basic results that we got from an actual corpus, the British Newspapers Archive, which is a 4.5 billion tokens that the British Library had. So we trained embeddings, and then we looked at the neighbors of the word train in the 1820s, and we see words related to the original meaning of train, as in sequence of things in fashion. But then in 20 years, the neighbors look completely different. You see words like Levitt engine carriages, and that's an indication of the shift, the semantic shift of the word towards the sense that we are familiar with today, or the sort of the main sense of sort of the vehicle. Okay, all nice and good, but then if we were to try and pretend to be a student who's not familiar with these techniques or who doesn't want to do the hard work and just asks a generative AI model, how did the word train change meaning during the Industrial Revolution, you get a little story, which, sounds plausible. But what the problem is there are no sources, the dates are vague, there is really no explanation, no evidence, no reproducibility. And this is what I mean. Maybe it's just me and my students being particularly lacking here, but it's something that I really see. And of course, getting to these results takes several steps in the pipeline, a whole workflow that we can engage with at every point. Whereas on the right, you see basically just the end result, and you're sort of taken to really take it critically. So I said I'm wearing many hats today. So as PI of the Koala project, what we're doing is, so we're tracking the evolution of Latin word meanings, which is 1,000 years. And to do that, we're building corpus, we're building an annotation, pipeline framework with guidelines to annotate a very difficult thing to do, which is sentences in a historical language that spans so many centuries and for which we don't have native speakers anymore. So what we're trying to do is apply FAIR principles in practice. Every claim that we make is traceable to text, so we're not just saying the word changed meaning, we're actually annotating individual word occurrences with semi-automatic methods. We are documenting sense inventory, making decisions about sense merging, and documenting all of that. So that the important thing is not necessarily the Latin part in this case, but how we're doing it, our approach, the fact that we are embracing open research principles. And as editor-in-chief of the Journal within Humanities Data, I actually had the opportunity to look at a wider range of data sets across the humanities, and the journal publishes data papers, so papers describing data sets. And so it is really making the work and the labor that goes into building data sets visible and credible. Data papers are academic outputs with citable outputs which go through peer review, so they give data creators full credit, basically. And it's really all about encouraging fair data, which is the opposite of what LLM training corpora are. We don't really know what they are. There's absolutely nothing about them that is fair. And on the other hand, or what we try and do in Dode is encouraging fair principles. And of course, I should not forget to say that we have a special collection on language data reuse, supported by CLARIN, and guest edited by Daria and Francesca, and coordinated by Paola Marongi. And the idea of that special collection is to draw attention not just to the data creation part, but particularly to the reuse part. And what does it take us to make a data set actually actually reusable? What are the barriers and the challenges? What can we do to make others reuse our data? Because it's very good to make sort of data accessible, but if no one reuses it because it just isn't fit for anyone else's purpose, then it doesn't go very far. And then as editorial board member of the SSA Table Marketplace, or SHOMP, as we call it internally. So this is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a curated discovery platform that is supported by the three Erics, CLARIN, Daria, and CESDA. And it basically provides an entry point to a range of different resources, data sets, training materials, tools, and very importantly, workflows. So it's just something that I feel is really important because it contributes to this sort of connecting the different parts of the research into a workflow. It's directly usable in teaching. All right, so we're here to talk about CLARIN. And so the link may be obvious to some of you, but just to make it clear why I said all this, I think that without open data and replicable workflows together, claims about language risk becoming opaque, which is exactly the problem that we have with larger language models. It is opacity that we're trying to oppose. And CLARIN is uniquely positioned, as we know, to be this infrastructure that makes this possible at scale across disciplines, across borders, across data sets. And of course, with all the language resources that it gives us access to, it is in really stark contrast with the opacity of generative AI models. Now, the question is whether we are using it as a pedagogical foundation and whether we are really breaking all the barriers that stand between us and the student and what the students need, which is what I care about. And so a few more words about about SHOMP. It's so that by the end of this talk, you're fully familiar with it and fully on board with it. I promised my fellow editorial board members that I would really wave the flag. So the marketplace is built around three principles, and I'll say later how I think like CLARIN and SHOMP already work together, but will work together even more. So three principles are contextualization, so the idea that resources aren't just listed in isolation, but there is a whole connection, a whole chain that connects, the data sets, the workflows, the training materials that go with it. So a student, for example, or a researcher can follow a research question all the way through this chain of resources and tools and materials. And also it's curated, so there's it's not a static directory. It constantly pulls materials, but also there is a curation layer that ensures the quality of what the marketplace contains. And the community path is a third principle. So anyone can contribute to the marketplace, suggest new entries, curate, enrich, flag what's already there. And this participation is already sort of open research practice in practice. So how does that apply to teaching? Well, the idea is that we want students to learn this reproducibility and this to adopt these whole workflow and not just go for the end result. This is something we discussed also in our breakout yesterday. I think it's really important. It's teaching them what a generative AI cannot really give them. So the ability to really reproduce whole pipelines, adapt them to the question at hand, and adopting open research principles along the way. So getting to the end with an open, deposited, citable output. So the two, of course, already connect. CLARIN is one of the sources that the marketplace draws from. But if I was talking about a research workflow or from a student point of view, they could do it already now. But what we need, I think, is to be a bit more explicit about the importance of teaching these skills and not fragmenting access to these wonderful resources. So, for example, they could go and find a corpus that interests them, and then, for example, processing it with some tool that they find, and then find a workflow that allows them to go step by step. Workflow could be, for example, semantic change detection. But how do we find what's the change meaning in the corpus? You need a corpus, you need to train embeddings, you need a change measure, and then you have a candidate set of words that you inspect and analyze. And you can then, deposit your results in an identifier. So all of this teaches them a range of really important skills that I think we need to insist on, in contrast with the easy solution provided by generative AI. Methodological literacy, having the terminology and the awareness comes with it. Documented pipelines, also awareness of what's available, because there's so much available in the ecosystem for social science and the humanities, resources, and findings that are the result of this transparent workflow, and a citable archived input-output that summarizes all this. So using infrastructure to realize open research in practice. But I said this is in infrastructure that is in place. We need to make it better. But I think we just need to crystallize, I think, in our minds, what are the priorities in this particular moment in time, because it is a challenging moment, but it is also an opportunity to really push ourselves. So what does this mean in practice for teaching? So I think, as I said, digital text literacy is fundamental, and it's something that CLARIN can provide already, and that we need to articulate, what a corpus is, what contextualization is. I find myself explaining this to digital humanists because I teach to students who are, most of them, not linguists, who are not interested in linguistics, but they need linguistics to achieve what they want. And if they come from literature background, they might be interested in studying sentiment analysis or topic modeling, but they need the steps before that. They need to know how to build a corpus, designing it, tokenizing in the way that helps their analysis. So going against that temptation to just get the straight, easy answers from generative AI. If they are classicists, they might be interested in geomapping and identity recognition. So it's sort of shifting between a tool focus to a sort of problem focus, and I think, and showing them the basic digital literacy tools that they need. Annotation as interpretation, that's also something I find myself explaining to students. That humans and generative AI, when classifying text, they are annotating text and they are interpreting it implicitly or explicitly. So it's about finding that annotation comes with all kinds of challenges, that we need an interpretative agreement, that we need to be critical about the fact that each annotation is an interpretation. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. You can go with graded approach as opposed to binary or categorical approaches, probabilistic approaches. All this to show that we need to be critical and we need to have all that in place without taking annotation as face value. So when they want to use LLM, say, well, you also need to show the quality of this annotation and to be critical about it. Also, real corpora, I find myself making this point to informatics students who getting really used to syntactic data that you can generate with generative AI. And of course, there've been studies and they show real differences between natural corpora and automatic generated corpora or syntactic data. And this is also something, of course, CLARIN can provide, and that I think needs to be surfaced even more. Yesterday in our breakout session, we were actually talking about making the integration with Hugging Face was seamless because, my informatics students, they're so used to Hugging Face, and it's so easy to load models and also get data sets there. But the quality that CLARIN resources offers is in many respects unique. It's just that we are lacking that seamlessness in that, and also teaching how important it is to deal with real world corpora. There's also, as a side, a thought that of course comes to mind. Increasingly, the models that we're talking about are going to be trained on synthetic data because data on the web is no longer only natural data. So we also need to consider that. I mentioned workflows. I think I'll repeat it. I think if we teach our students the importance of workflows and of getting to the end result through a series of steps that are documented and open and transparent, that each of them needs to be assessed and evaluated, I think, again, it's something that CLARIN or also Sean provide that they can all get. And so if we stress that importance, and then, of course, evaluating the output of AI, understanding, spotting hallucinations, asking the right questions, being critical. These are skills that come from understanding data, and this is the richness of the research that we have. So I looked at the report from 2019, and of course, yesterday we heard the results of this year's survey. So these are things that are still so they are in progress, and they are good steps in the right direction. So we see, and some of this, of course, was covered yesterday. We have more teaching materials, they're more visible. They possibly need to be even more visible, particularly discipline-specific ones. I find myself struggling with this because I understand CLARIN is talking more and more to an audience that is broader than just linguists. And I teach digital humanists, and my students come from all kinds of backgrounds: literature, foreign languages, communication studies, classics, philosophy, and journalism even. So they are not familiar with the terminology, and they also need the language and the terms that are from their discipline. Of course, we talked about micro, meso, and macro level. Still, I think more can be done to go beyond the individual lectures initiative. Also going beyond the consortium, going to other communities. I think that can always be done, and making it easier for people outside the community to be aware. But I think what we need to face is the fact that, as I said, the students come with using generative AI. Commercial AI platforms are present. We do see efforts on making training models that are not commercial, but I think this is a reality that we need to face. And yes, there is an LLM dedicated initiative within CLARIN, but maybe it can be more widespread across other initiatives. Of course, we are under pressure from funders on open science requirements, and we are aware of this. The marketplace keeps improving and growing, and the workflows are there. I think to offer a really good example that maybe CLARIN could incorporate as well, more systematically. So really, the case of open data has never been made easier, but it is about implementing it and helping our students in that journey. So really, to summarize what I said, I think we have a core that we've had since the beginning in CLARIN and that we should be hanging on to. Research infrastructure, metadata literacy, fair and care as well. Mentioned care for the first time today, but of course comes hand in hand with fair, open science and standards. So that's our core. But then I think we need, as I said before, a flexible toolbox that is problem-driven and not tool-driven. So yes, it's great to have the tools, but students, at least my students, are focused on the end goal, on the problem they need to solve. They're not linguists. They want to analyze female versus male characters in a novel, for example. They have that in mind, and how can we adapt the toolbox in a way that perhaps and achieve that, even though they are not familiar with the building blocks. We have the data sets, as I mentioned earlier, the importance of real authentic language data. We have workflows. I think we need these building blocks to be adaptable and discipline specific. As I said, historically, we've been talking to linguists, but I think if we increasingly talk to non-linguists, we'll see that each discipline will have their own requirements. And I think in all of this, we need to keep a student agency in mind. We need to really hold on to our students. There is this risk of this passive involvement where they are sort of numb. And we want instead to wake them up and to keep them engaged and to actually make them aware that they are fully part of this whole process. They can, deposit that corpora as small they are, as small as they need to be. They can produce publish analysis with the, following FAIR principles. They can really participate in this open research workflow and, recognize that their contributions can be published, can be citable. They are, not just data sets, tools, workflows. So just to finish, I think that we shouldn't counter opaque AI with more opacity. We should counter it with more transparency, which is what we're already doing. But I think we need to be very clear about it. We have open data as a scholarly value, so not just as some, given, but as something we really believe in, and that is at the core of our research. CLARIN is uniquely positioned for this, as I mentioned, with the natural data sets, with the openness. No commercial platform can offer this at scale. But we really want to, I think education is an area where that makes this very urgent. We want to develop the next generation of AI critical scholars, and we need to do that in a way that our curricula are built to serve their needs, and before sort of these tool-oriented and sort of easy solutions become the default. So just to finish, for years, we've had to make efforts for open data and saying how we need to be open and fair. But now I think generative AI has done the hard work of making it super clear, well beyond our community, because the risks otherwise are real and potentially devastating. And so I think we can embrace this urge coming from generative AI. And we are uniquely positioned for this. And I think the argument is one that we can win against ChatGPT. Thank you.
Any questions?
It sounds very nice. CLARIN has the open data and so on, but reality is open data and labeled data is less than 0.5% of what is needed to train models. So we will never have this amount of data that will make an impact on the future development of the content of AI. So I think that's a problem.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think they should compete with the commercial AI platforms to train models. I think we are complementary, and I think we can teach our students the importance of real, authentic data, and teaching them the tools that allow us to do certain analysis of language data against just going for an easy solution. But I think
How can we teach them that clean data is better if they're using with such a lot of success data they get from somewhere else? So
because what you mean with such a success using LLMs and the generative AI, but because that does not give them the answers. It will give them a solution, but it will. So the example of the semantic change. If they want to research why a certain word changed meaning, or when and how, they'll get some answers from an LLM, but they're not going to get the reasons, and they're not going to be able to understand. So I think we need to give them the skills to do the steps that allow them to have control over the whole workflow. I'm not sure if I make sense.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just the devil's advocate and see.
Yes.
Because the task seems to be impossible.
But yes, I mean that's why I decided to talk about this elephant in the room, because I pushed for that also in a breakout, because I think there is such a temptation to go for the easy solution, but I think we can show them that the easy solution is not explainable, is not interpretable, is not giving them value, basically, not teaching them unless they really engage with it critically. I think. Any thoughts?
Thank you for the very nice talk, and I wanted to get you back to the synthetic data, because and its value in Gen AI era, because, for example, from our experience, we used this for dialect data. There was not enough, so we had to generate. And the other use case was with lexical chains. For example, if you want to get these semantic relations from word nets or resources like this, you need to use something like this. And I just wanted to ask you to elaborate more on importance or non-importance of such data.
Yes, no, thank you. I mean, yes, of course, in certain contexts, synthetic data is what we need. And yeah, definitely, I'm not completely against it. But I'm just saying, when we do have access to really high quality data, like CLARIN, what we find in CLARIN, then that has value. In certain contexts, it's much better to have natural data if you can afford it. So yes, my point is that I think often it's a question of ignorance, and the students don't know that there are such resources that they can use, and they go for the easy, quick solution. Sometimes that's synthetic data. But yeah, of course, there is value in it, as a research tool, but when done, with awareness and, in the right context.
Thank you.
Thank you. I fully agree with your what you're saying about making the students give them an alternative to and explain the alternative. But I think also the temptation of, as you say, for using LLMs and GenAI is that it's so easy. But if we point them to the mistakes, maybe if you teach them where the pitfalls are, I think that's the best argument. Of course, if you need to have an alternative, and if the chains are there, the like we discussed yesterday, and on it's domain specific, for the use cases in a way that are explain recipes on how to treat certain use cases that they hopefully can generalize over. But I think teaching them about the biases of AI, about what in my course I try to build up AI from old school or and then when it's really bad and then they see it improve by adding more recent inventions, let's say. But they see where it comes from and it's really rubbish and then it starts to be a little bit better. But yeah, I think it's important to get away from all the anthropomorphization of AI and not use terms like understanding and that, to make them realize it's just a mind machine.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we need to keep an historical perspective as well in how the NLP research has been developed. And sometimes the simpler tools is what all they need, and they also make us save lots of energy and storage, which is significant. Of course, and also pointing them to errors. The thing is, it's a moving target because next month maybe the LLMs will do better in that particular case. So you need to find the next problem. But yeah, I completely agree. I think it's this ambivalence. On the one hand, we want to show that there's still value in more traditional NLP tools, even just from a historical perspective to understand the evolution, but also sometimes in their own right. On the other hand, I think we also need to engage more with, particularly NLP community that could know CLARIN better, but don't. And speak their language. Yeah, maybe that's about collaboration with Hugging Face or making it more seamless in that sense. But yeah, thank you.
I think there we have the problem that a large part of the NLP community is not in the SSH field. I mean, they're just computer scientists.
Yeah.
And they have not heard about research infrastructures and all, as far as I know.
Yeah, but they're missing out on the quality data that CLARIN could offer. So yeah, how do we build that gap?
I agree. This is a target group that what it is.
Yeah. I mean, once upon a time, when I started my PhD, we were called computational linguists, not NLP researchers. And so the connection between linguistics and computational linguistics was very natural. But then I think it has drifted more. Yeah.